Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live from Krakoa, Not Just Another Mutant Story. I'm Cap,
I'm Perseus.
and we want to welcome everybody to our show. This is our first episode tonight, and tonight we're going to be talking about the first issue of X-Men, starting from their rerun, the last story written by Chris Claremont, The Mutant Genesis. Here's the cover. So a lot of what comes from this is actually what started the X-Men cartoons. So starting out, this is the last Chris Claremont story. So it starts out with this really cool space attack that's going on. Some mutants had stolen a ship and they're getting chased by SHIELD agents and they're going towards Asteroid M. Once they get there, Magneto kind of comes out of his home, stops the fight, and he's like, I don't want any of your trouble. Go back to Earth. Leave me alone." And then these guys say, "No, we're mutants. We need to follow you." So that breaks into the X-Men in the Danger Room. So they're all back together for the first time in a real long time after being separated and going their separate ways. And as they're doing this exercise where the goal is to tag Professor Xavier, you've got the different X-Men fighting in different scenarios. And once they're done, Wolverine comes out and tag Charlie, "You're it." They all go their separate ways. Everybody's talking about the future of the team, and then they get a call from Nick Fury. Nick Fury has been with the UN, and they're talking about activating something mysterious called the Magneto Protocols. Blasting Asteroid M out of the sky because of this incident that happened, and they're asking the X-Men for help. The X-Men go on high alert, and Charles Xavier tells Cyclops it's time to split up into our two teams, the gold and the blue team. As they're talking about the different teams, everything's getting set up. They get the alert. Magneto's come back to Earth. He's raising a submarine he had dunked a long time ago, sank when they attacked him, and he's pulling the nukes off board from the ship. And that's when the X-Men come in. So that's basically kind of where the first issue ends up. Really cool story leading up to what's really going on here. Leading up into this new era of X-Men.
Yeah, it was basically like a kind of quick, hey, here's the players, here's the game, and you don't get, it doesn't really start kicking off till probably issue 2, but
Really does, yeah, but it is like a coming together because for what people who hadn't been read into, and a lot of people started with X-Men right here, and this is a great starting point, but previously, Cyclops and the original X-Men were an X-Factor. The New Mutants were running around on their own after Magneto had disappeared initially. The X-Men, after going through the Siege Perilous, were in Australia, off the radar. Nobody knew, doing more kind of spy stuff. So this is just a cool way to bring the whole team back in.
yeah, basically a reboot without it being a reboot.
Absolutely, yeah. And Marvel isn't one to known to be the, "Hey, this isn't working, let's just reboot everything." Differently, they just bring things back together and talk about things in the past later on. I mean, it's not a really...
Well, they sometimes do the wiping. You know.
Yeah, but it's so subtle, it's not like it's
Really?
resetting a whole universe.
No more mutants was subtle? Alright.
That is a discussion for another episode, guys. We're gonna have to really go into that one now. You broke open something.
Yeah, so then that leads us into issue 2, and that's where we're going to see, Magneto continuing to fight the blue team in Genosha along with the Acolytes, till that ends up becoming, Magneto's win, where he takes the blue team with him. And on returning, Cortez notifies him of basically, some interesting things with his DNA. And Magneto immediately knows who it is, considering Moira McTaggart is the one dealing with him when he was a baby, or transformed back to a baby. So he goes, takes Moira, and then they proceed to discuss the differences in the DNA, as well as how they can change Blue Team so that they follow Magneto instead of Xavier, which she ends up doing. The Gold Team ends up fighting Blue Team in the Danger Room, and then you have towards the end there, you have the Magneto Protocol with the plasma cannon that they now show, and how Nick Fury is trying to get everybody off that rock now.
Yeah, I remember this when I was a kid reading this issue and getting to those last couple of pages where the X-Men walked in and looked at Xavier and said, "No, we're with Magneto now. You're going to be too." Like a bunch of brainwashed idiots. Yeah. And then you go to the next page and you see like Colossus standing over, I think it was like Beast's body, and Wolverine's like gutted Jean Grey because they think that this program is going to get so crazy up there. I remember seeing that before it switched to the next page where it was the Danger Room and going, "Oh, they're all dead." They did that. Blue team is it.
It was definitely so. In this issue, I feel like you got some cool action. You got some big story, stuff reveals with the Magneto Protocol.
Yeah, and a lot of great big artwork.
Right, that's true. Yeah, well, and Jim Lee, like
amazing artist. You love him to death.
He loves the little intricate details at times. But yeah, I think it was great. The story's pacing was really well done.
It did, and Chris Claremont, this being his last, end of his full run. Of course, he was going to come back in a lot of different X-Men stories. The few that come to mind, like The End, Nightcrawler. He's now doing the Gambit story right now. He's going to come back. He's going to do stories for X-Men, but this was the end of a run from 76 to 91. And I think this is a great way to put it together with the new team that was coming in.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Now the final chapter of this particular story and the beginning of this new X-Men arc, issue 3. So we start out here. We know the X-Men have got to get up to Asteroid M to save their teammates. As the Gold team's flying up, accompanied also with Banshee and Forge to save the X-Men. As they're coming up to the ship, the plasma cannon's getting ready to fire on Asteroid M. They're running low on time. Magneto's getting real weak, and this is where we start to see that Moira has figured out that Fabian Cortez's powers, when he uses them on Magneto, as the effects wear off, it's making him weaker and it's making him more vulnerable. But Magneto doesn't realize it because he's hurt. When he uses his powers, he feels better, and then he's quickly deteriorating himself. We cut back to the Acolytes and the X-Men. They're all hanging out on Asteroid M. They're jumping in the pool. They're swimming around. And then we see Wolverine start to act a little weird, and then he leaves. And Beast turns back and says, "Oh man, something's going on." Wolverine ends up going and finding Moira. And he sees on the security screens that the X-Men are coming in an invisible jet. They break in, they save Xavier first. They're all worried about having to fight their teammates. And as they step out and the X-Men come out to fight, they start to get into a royal rumble here. But as each of the X-Men are using their powers against their friends, they're starting to snap out of control. And that's when Magneto joins the fight. Magneto shows up. He's ready to just knock everybody down. And Wolverine shows up with Moira. That's where they finally explain to Magneto, nothing she could have done could have hurt you anyways, because as a mutant used his powers, the treatment that she was doing completely faded away, which is why it didn't work. Magneto doesn't want to believe him, but then they find out that Cortez has left on a shuttle. He's fleeing. He knows the Magneto protocols are active and they're about to blast Asteroid M out of the sky. Boom, done, everybody. The X-Men say, "Come on, we got to get out of here. We'll figure out what we can do when we get back to Earth." And Magneto says, "No, everybody out." Pushes everybody into the ship. They get detached. He and the Acolytes that are left alive stay on Asteroid M, and he protects everybody. The ship gets away, but he can't keep it up, and the plasma cannon hits Asteroid M, and Magneto and the Acolytes now appear to be dead, and the X-Men are coming back to Earth.
Yeah, it's
great ending.
It is a good ending, considering that they basically took, in this soft reboot,
right?
They basically just took one of the major villains of the X-Men. Well, I guess arch villain, semi-villain.
I'd still call him the major villain, even though he has his time of not being villain.
Yeah, I mean, he goes back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
So I think to sit there and it was a risk on this reboot to take one of your biggest adversaries and maybe kill him off. Like
I think it is. I see where you're going with that, especially. I mean, when we talk about Magneto, we talk about X-Men #1 is the first appearance of Magneto. Magneto has been the X-Men villain since the very beginning, even though he's came back. But I think having this particular run, Chris Claremont, we've mentioned him a few times, the writer, 1976 to 1991, uninterrupted, wrote the X-Men books, Uncanny X-Men. Now, there were other X books. He had essentially created most of the characters that we know today, but at the same time also split up that team, had the original team somewhere else, this new team with everybody coming together. Not only do we have, it's kind of like a means to an end.
Yeah. It was a good buy, you know.
Yeah. And we all know nobody dies in comic books. I'm sorry, spoiler alert for everybody out there. If you're just getting into comic books, I can't think of anybody who stayed dead.
Maybe that's something for another show.
A completely different episode. We're gonna have to have way more time for that one.
Yeah. And then the goodbye to Claremont was subtle, you know. It wasn't in everybody's face like Todd's when it was just said bye Todd on the Spider-Man cover.
Yeah, I still love Todd McFarlane. I don't know what he's talking about.
I love Todd McFarlane too. You know that.
Todd is great, but I do have like 3 copies of that Bye Todd cover because I think it's awesome. I got the first one. I got the second print, and then I have just an extra one just because I found it in a dollar bin. It's one of those books that you have to buy every time you see it.
Yeah, especially if you're a Todd McFarlane fan.
Yeah,
it's just,
love everything he did on Spider-Man. But yeah, you get a subtle goodbye to Chris Claremont in the last page, right in the bottom corner of the book. It's real nice. I mean, I have read this book probably 100 times, and I didn't notice it the first 50 times that I wrote it because the way that the story moves on from here flows so well that you don't even realize that you've got this brand new guy after 20-something years of work coming in and taking over.
Well, yeah, I mean, almost immediately after these 3 issues, they basically just branch off in a whole side, basically a Wolverine storyline.
Kind of, yeah.
And then, but it was like, oh man, all this stuff just like literally, you know, worlds at war.
Yeah.
And then the next issue is, let's bring back a Wolverine. Let's just make this a Wolverine run. But it made sense at the time, though. You know,
it did because I mean, a lot of the people out there may not remember this or may not have seen it yet. But if you've got, maybe we should edit out shameless plug until they pay us. If you've got a particular streaming service that shows a lot of Marvel. There are the X-Men cartoons. Now, this book was published in 1991. The X-Men cartoons came out shortly after this book came out, right in 1992. And it changed how kids flocked to comic books.
Yeah.
The X-Men cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon, and then there was a few others that followed. The Batman.
I mean, the X-Men cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon was up there. But the 2 cartoons that everybody sits there and says that they remember are Batman the Animated Adventures and the X-Men. Because
completely 100%. I grew up with that. I remember being, I wasn't even 10 years old yet when the first episode came out, and Fox was premiering it on like a Friday night at 9 p.m. I remember staying up and sitting there with popcorn, my jammies, watching it. I remember every second of that show. And it was, later on that year where I was introduced to my first comic, and it was X-Men number 8. And then from there just blossomed into this huge mess you guys may or may not be able to see behind me of long boxes and comic books.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's one of those things that, you know, when we were growing up, that comics were seeing a resurgence, but they were not, it was still kind of taboo to be a comic fan, you know, like it's not like nowadays where
you're still, if you're looking at comic books, you're a kid. But they weren't just for kids. I mean, guys, pick this book up.
Yeah, they
Check
were
out
great.
Psylocke's costume. Tell me
And
it's
the
for
writing,
kids.
the writing is very adult. I mean, like I'd say that I'd say after the cartoons came out is when comics kind of went back to being a little more kiddish.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the cartoons were kiddish. That was cool. That got people
yeah,
into
but
it.
even the
But the
cartoons
books,
weren't that kiddish. Like,
they had some adult themes on it, but
yeah,
they toned them down. The 90s
yeah,
was very different from now, ladies and gentlemen. there there was not as much worry about what you let slip out on TV back then.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, but but yeah, no, I think that this this three little issues that for a farewell for Claremont and for the soft reboot of the X-Men
Yeah.
was excellent, and it came at the perfect time, and they capitalized on it quickly with the show and everything, and it was great, and
Yeah.
I loved it.
If anybody
Couldn't
at
be
Marvel,
happier.
if anybody at Marvel's watching and they're wondering if this marketing technique worked, it did.
Yeah,
You
big time.
can't see to the right over here, but Perseus can let you know. Cap has an entire bookcase of nothing but X-Men action figures. He likes to set up in different scenarios and make it look all cool. I've spent
Yeah.
too much money on X-Men. We're using a short box here as a table because we both love this X-Men cover. That's why we made it our first episode.
Yeah.
But hey, thank everybody for coming in. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Please, it all
Comment.
helps us up. Comment. Let us know if there's anything you want us to cover.
Or if there's anything that you feel that we need to fix with any of this. This is our first episode.
Yes.
But really, we're just trying to reach out with the community so that we just feel like we want to give back since we were given so much from this.
And for both of us here, I mean, our goal here, if we can get one person to go out and start reading a comic book just because they listened to something and they thought something we were talking about is interesting, it's really all I'm here for. Comics taught me how to be a better man and where to spend my money.
That's true.
Join us next time. We're going to take a little bit different direction and try something else out. We're going to be doing a character discussion on one of Perseus's favorite characters.
Venom.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Have a good one.